I had a burning desire as I was younger to take what I was doing, and like during college, we try to do a little bit better every single day. Get that little incremental wins that continue to just compound on each other.
What's something you did wrong early on, and how did you fix it?
So something that we have in the past that I would say I did wrong, because an owner is asking an architect to, they want to save as much money as they can to spend on their project. We've tried numerous things that have kind of flopped from a technology standpoint, and some of that might be because it sounded better than it actually was a shiny object. How do we do that without micromanaging people, without people feeling that we're in every single decision of theirs? And
On this episode of the On Center podcast, we're sitting down with Greg Looney, founder and CEO of Inherent Commercial. In just a few years, Greg has grown the Indianapolis-based firm into one of the region's fastest-growing contractors, with a portfolio spanning multifamily, senior living, adaptive reuse, and commercial projects across Indiana. We're looking forward to hearing about his journey from the field to the company founder, his approach to pre-construction and client relationships, and what he's seeing in today's construction market. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Map Solutions, because discovering a column in the wrong place after demolition is a terrible way to make new friends. Map Solutions provides nationwide LiDAR scanning, reality capture, and as-built modeling services, so your projects can begin with accurate existing conditions and fewer surprises. Greg, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
absolutely, thanks for having me.
We've known each other for a while. It's been a while since we've talked, but
Yeah,
I was really looking forward to this because I think we had some really good conversations in the past. So
yeah, absolutely.
this is going to be awesome. Um, okay, so a lot of people in construction say they grew up around it,
Yeah.
but very few turn that early exposure into a fast scaling company. You've built Inherent Commercial into one of the fastest growing firms in the region in a relatively short time. So if you could walk us through the early years, what were the inflection points that took you from working in the industry to deciding I'm going to build my own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting journey, as most people's are. I did have my mother and father first off gave me the work ethic that I have today, which I'm very thankful for, and which required us to my siblings and I to work hard and always give everything our all. From a young age, started really enjoying to tinker with things. So I would take things apart. I would see how they go together, and I always had that kind of a mind. And one thing led to another, and the older I got, and we needed to renovate some stuff at the house. So, I'm working with my dad, and we're just some trial and error on some things around the house, and that really got me interested in, how things are built. How do we put a house together? How do we, make flooring, put flooring down or whatever. And we didn't have the disposable income at the time to be able to, just hire somebody to come in and do it. So we had to learn how to do it. And so then that drove my desire to look into going into the architecture field to begin with. And it was really a class that I had when I was in high school, and it was a drafting class. And so it was still doing everything, with all the drafting tools and doing it by hand, and learning the basics of how to draw stuff from that. So I wanted to harness that to go to pursue architecture at Ball State, and had actually done between my junior year of high school and sophomore and junior year of high school. I went and did a camp at Ball State that they do through the College of Architecture and Planning School, and it was like a 2-week camp where you'd stay on campus, and they kind of do an immersion course of 2 weeks into the program. I loved that, and I thought, man, I'm all in on this architecture thing, until someone told me about construction management, and then I was like, oh. I didn't realize I could go to Purdue or other schools to major in construction management. And as I started looking into that further, I was like, I think this fits me better. Not, I still have the appreciation for architecture, and of course, how things are put together, how things are drawn, how do we get it from paper to 3D in person in the field. So pursued a degree at Purdue, which then took off, and I met the company that I ended up working for right out of college, here in Indianapolis, and that always had I had a burning desire as I was younger to take what I was doing, and like during college, I would build, decks for people, or I would do, odd jobs around their houses, or, whatever they needed done, because at that point I had accumulated tools and I had accumulated some knowledge of that. And so I always had that desire to go out, and it was, once you get a little taste of it, it becomes a little bit more addicting. You're like, "Oh, that was kind of fun." I did that. I did that with my own hands. And so while I was working at my first job, so I had interned, fast forward, I had interned for 3 years with the same company while I was at Purdue, and tremendous experience. And nothing against my education, but the 3 summers worth of information far outshone my 4 years of actually sitting in a classroom, because I'm a much more hands-on learner, and that's how I like to absorb things. And, so I thought, at the time, man, I landed at a great company. I love these people. The culture's great, and thought I'd be a lifer there, and realized quickly that, I'd spent almost 7 years full time, but I just started getting that bug that I could not get rid of, and that I really had to, see if I could go and put my own spin on a construction firm. Obviously, you never are done learning,
Right.
and so when I look back at when I jumped out and what I didn't know, like, it's amazing, just because, you get hit left and right once you get out there. But been very fortunate for my time that I did spend at the previous company, and what it taught me and the foundation it gave me. And then, to fast forward today, been almost 10 years since I jumped out on my own. And I'm still every day, learning something new. Something pops up that I haven't dealt with before. And so I'm still a student of, learning how to run a business,
That
right?
keeps it fun.
It is,
Yeah.
it is. So, it is something that, as I've, some lessons along the way that, people would tell you or tell me that I didn't truly understand or appreciate until I actually had to do that. And, one of those that, and it's a little abrupt, but it is the, fire fast, hire slow. And, that's one thing that, I think I was firing slow, hiring slow. So I was being conservative on the hiring side, but then it was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna drag this out, drag this out, drag this out." And in reality, it's usually, if you're feeling that this isn't working, the other person's probably feeling it's not working. And so you just gotta make the move, because it's probably the most kind thing to do, is to make sure you both can go, and be successful in what you're doing. So, we've tried to harness that more. I know it sounds kind of abrupt, but at the same token, it's, we all have a finite amount of time,
Mhm.
and so we have to do the most and maximize the most amount of time we can, with that. So, we've been very fortunate to have really good team members, over at the Inherent team. And, we just every day, just we try to do a little bit better every single day. Get, that little incremental, um, uh, wins that continue to just compound on each other. So
What's something, early on that like, when you with Inherent,
Mhm.
when you started here, what's something you did wrong early on, and how did you fix it?
So something that we have in the past that I would say I did wrong was, exactly that, is holding on to the notion that, um, I didn't want to fire people. I had created an environment that, like, I'm not just bringing somebody in to be another person on the team. It's truly bringing in families, so we get close with people. We understand what makes them tick. We're with them all the time. And I would say that, we've let that, we would let some things linger that maybe weren't the most beneficial to the team, and it was detracting from what we were trying to do. So we had to get to the point where we were saying, "Hey, this is a business decision. It's not a personal decision. It's something that we have to do for this business to survive and thrive."
Mhm.
And so along with that just becomes more decisiveness. So, we talk about all the time with our team is sitting on something and not making a decision can be worse than making the wrong decision. and that happens a lot. And so we always are talking about urgency, and you have to be careful in the company of saying everything's urgent because there's different levels of urgency,
Sure.
and what's urgent to you may not be urgent to me. And that is where we try to draw that line of we have to have the proper amount of urgency depending on what the situation is. So,
Good answer. You've been pretty vocal about not trying to be the lowest bidder,
yes.
but instead the most complete.
Yes.
I'm curious about that. So that sounds great until a client is staring at a spreadsheet and your number is not the smallest, because usually that's the first thing they look at.
Absolutely.
How do you actually sell that philosophy in the room? And what does complete look like in a way that architects and owners can feel, not just hear?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I've probably lost more jobs than I care to count because we do hold that very high standard that, if we wanted to, we could go out and bid a lot of public jobs. Everybody race to the bottom.
Mhm.
The low end gets it. And then you figure out a way to make your money back or cover your costs later on. And that is a rat race that we do not want to be
So
in.
you bid
And
low and then the price creeps up. Yeah.
yeah, there's price creep, and then everybody's mad at everybody else, and it's an antiquated model in my opinion. That would be your tip. That's your traditional design, bid, and then build. There's one thing that I always laugh at that it's historically called design, bid, build model, but it's really design, bid, um, figure out how to make the numbers work, lop some things off the project, go back, rebid it, and then go and build it. So the process is just clunky. And so what we're trying to do and what I feel successful in doing is that not every time are we going to come out and be the lowest number. But I think clients and owners that we can work with and talk with them is that they've all been ingrained to buy based on price. We all have, right? Everything you're always looking at price, but really you need to be looking at value. What am I getting for my dollar? And what type of value are we giving to a client to solve a problem that they have? That particular problem, maybe that they need someone to bring their 2D drawings into 3D form out in the field, but, if we race to the bottom, most of the time that's when the conflict happens because there's not enough money in a budget or, "Hey, we knew this needed to be there, but it wasn't on the drawings, so we just didn't build it." So what it means is that if I'm going into it and an architect from our side on the construction side, we don't expect architects and engineers to be perfect, just like we would expect people to not expect us to be perfect because there's human error in everything we're doing. And so if there's a gray area on the plans or if it's an existing building for instance, and something isn't fully defined yet, we haven't opened up walls yet, we can't necessarily see everything back there. How do we properly plan for that? We know there's going to be cost, but what is it? Well, we can't define it today, but let's put an allowance or let's put some sort of money earmarked for that particular issue. And if it comes up and we open up the wall and it's better than we thought, great. Then the money's not spent. But the last thing you want and the last thing a client wants is a surprise when they haven't been told, hey, this is a possibility. So we have our pre-construction team has done a very good effort in making that a very known item when we go into a project, and we talk about those things a lot. And more so than, we know that it calls out this type of carpet in this room. We know that it's got this paint on the wall, but what we don't know are the hidden things. What we don't know are, on new construction, which we're doing a lot of right now, we don't know what's underground other than what the geotech report shows. But then that is it's isolated where it's at. So how can we fill in the blanks to provide the most value so that they can plan the most upfront?
Sure.
There are times where we cannot make their decision for them, and they still continue to choose just based on the bottom dollar that is on the paper. And I would bet a lot of money that if they looked at the end of their project and what their costs were, they're going to be at or greater than where we were at by looking at it up front to provide the value of services that we're providing.
You find that, okay. So first off, let me backtrack. It sounds like
So
your bidding process is not just responding to an RFP with a proposal. Your
correct,
bidding process is a conversation.
correct.
So have you found that they have had other proposals that are lower and they go back and ask those people the questions that you were talking about?
There have been,
Yeah.
yes, because what we're trying to do is we will say, "Hey, Mr. Owner, like, that's all good and great," if they come back and say, "Well, you're higher than XYZ contractor." And when we say, "Well, did they look at this, this, and this?" Because we have an idea, right? Everybody like, go back to the carpet, the paint thing. Everybody's gonna pick up that carpet because it says carpet right there. Everybody's gonna pick up the paint because it says paint right there. But what about, did they pick this up? Because there's some anomaly here, but the details aren't completely built out yet. And so we say, what did they figure in for that? Because it's not us trying to, find out what our competition is, trying to get the owner to understand that no matter who builds this for you, it's going to come up. And I think that's where it's critical. So even if we end up still not being successful on that project, we still feel good about knowing that we brought that to the owner's light, and hopefully that will help them as they carry forward in that project. So,
Mhm.
now there is some gamesmanship in there where, we will hold things a little bit. We'll tell them like, hey, maybe enough to like understand that here's where it is, but we don't give them the answers to every single answer to the test, right? Of exactly where we're pulling that. But like, hey, there's some things in here we think we could pull out X amount of dollars if we could work through some of these value engineering items or things of that nature. So most of our work is in the ability to have that discussion is because it's more of a either a negotiated process or it's a invited bid scenario. So we're either a captive audience with the owner or we have one of two or three bidding on it. And we don't like to play in that market where you've got 4, 5, 6 people bidding the same project from the construction management side, because at that point, it's just we have so much overlap in the subs, and you're really not getting any benefit once you get that many more people. So we'll also suggest is doing maybe like a fee proposal, and so we can go in before the drawings maybe even ever drawn, or maybe there's just a conceptual drawing that we can come in and say, okay, we think it's X amount of months, which is then going to help drive what our general condition cost is, and then also what our fee percentage would be on that job. But the cost of the work is going to be driven by the market.
Sure.
So that's how we're able to have those conversations where we're not just going and waiting for a full plan set to come to us, bid it, and then say, okay, well, we'll see what happens. So we're working then a lot more.
Are your estimators trained to have these conversations, or when these conversations
Absolutely.
have to happen, is it more like you or your BD guy?
It's all of the above. So typically it would be our pre-construction team. They're the ones that are on the front lines because they're deep into the drawings. They're doing all the, pieces, parts, making sure it works. And that doesn't mean they're perfect either. I mean, we miss stuff as well. We spend a lot of time scoping the drawings out and making sure that we've got things covered. And then with our client relations and myself as well, sometimes we have to have additional conversations, and again, it may not lead to them giving us the project because they still can't get the traditional model of just go buy the low number
Sure.
and then we'll figure it out from there. So
I think that's a great philosophy. A lot of architects listening have been burned by budgets that drift or
yeah,
even explode mid-project. You've positioned pre-construction as a core differentiator.
yeah.
What are the biggest mistakes you see teams make before construction even starts? And what does a locked-in project actually require from both the architect and the contractor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one thing that's really difficult, and I love talking to architects about this because it's been a traditional model where the architect is pitted against the general contractor, right? Because the owner brings us in contractually, they are the middle party. Everybody's contracted to them, but we don't have any actual contractual tie in a traditional model. Now, there's other models of design build and things of that nature, which we could bring an architect in and nest them under as a full package. But most of the work that I deal with and our firm deals in is that there is a relationship where they're contracted directly to the owner. The uh, so understanding that like what the architect has been given as their set of playbook and what the construction team has been given and their set of playbook rules, usually don't match up. And
Mm,
it's very interesting because an owner is asking an architect to, they want to save as much money as they can to spend on their project. Well, they don't want to spend the architecture dollars on it. They want to spend that money on the actual tile or the actual product that's being built. And so they're going to skimp their budget, squeeze the architect and engineering teams down, and they have to get these drawings done and produced to get permits and get this thing off on the street. Well, their timelines are crunched, their budgets are crunched, they're all these things that are going against them, and they put this package together. Well, then they come and they have us, and hopefully, if we're in a design assist scenario where we're there early enough, we can be helping in that process by saying, "Hey, Mr. Architect, I see that you drew this, but we're seeing this in the market." And while we aren't architects and engineers, we can throw those suggestions out to help bring more value to it. We're trying to come with an a la carte list, knowing that the owner has told us we got to get this as budget friendly as possible. And so what they are telling the architect though is, hey, we want this thing to look as awesome as this. This is my dream. And then they come to us and say, but I got to afford it.
yeah,
So how do we match those two up without angering the other party, right? And so I traditionally go into a project and talk to the architect ahead of time and say, "Hey, listen, the owner has asked me to, we gave an initial budget and they said this thing needs to be $2 million less. So here's where I'm starting to go down that path. Of course, I try to do everything, and our pre-construction team tries to do everything that is non-visible. So what are things that are in the walls or in the systems or anywhere that you change them, nobody else would ever know except the project team involved in it, that it isn't the paint on the wall and it's not the flooring that you're walking on. That still all looks the same, but you can do the same code required systems, but maybe they're a tier down and they're not the Cadillac of systems per se. And so we always try to make sure that the architects understand that, like, hey, we're not coming after you guys. We would love to just build what you guys have said to build, but unfortunately, the owner has tasked us with something
and you're the
that
messenger.
now I have to get this money out or this project doesn't go. Well, the only way we actually make money is by building. Pre-construction is a necessary piece of what we do, but we don't monetize our pre-construction. We monetize by building the building. So that's where our goal always is. And it's, some get it, some don't, and it's all in how you convey a message, right?
Sure.
Instead of sending somebody a lengthy email at Friday night at 4:30 telling them all these things that you're changing or trying to change on their design versus saying, "Hey, let's have a conversation, let's pick up the phone. Guys, this looks great, but I'm seeing some budget issues. So here's what we actually are going to suggest," and kind of give it a little bit more softball serve it. So
Very
that
cool.
yeah.
Your portfolio touches multifamily,
Mhm.
senior living, adaptive reuse, which just happen to be some of the most active sectors in Indiana right now.
Yeah.
From your vantage point in the field, instead of behind a desk,
Mhm.
where do you think the real opportunities are over the next few years, and where are developers still kidding themselves?
Um, and this is my personal opinion. You can probably find whatever answer you want out in the
Sure.
market because some talking head is going to
But I want your personal.
give you that. My personal opinion is that housing is here to stay for a while. Well, I know from the outside looking in, people say all the time when they find out how many apartments we're building or what we're doing, where are all these people coming? Where are they? Whatever. And the shortage of affordable housing, number one, is a big thing. And how do we make housing more affordable? We touch on markets that are when I'm looking at the multifamily, we get into senior living, we get into traditional just market rate multifamily, we get into maybe some workforce housing that is some subsidies from a local city or town to help offset some of the expenses of the project, or we get into full blown, tax credit, LIHTC deals, that we have the full gamut of all those going on right now. And so I think that the housing has been underbuilt, which is hard to believe in a lot of people's eyes, but it has still been underbuilt since the '08, '09 crash of the housing market. And so we've never been able to truly catch up on that. And then when people have single family homes that they've been in and they're sub, whatever, 5% or whatever on their mortgage and locked in, they're not moving. They're staying put because it's too expensive to go and get out into another home. So then you've got all these homes that are locked up because they're never hitting the market. And so, when interest rates are high, you're borrowing, you can't, people aren't as liquid. They can't put the money down to buy a house. So what are they doing? They're turning to renting. And so we feel that we're still positioned really well to continue the housing needs plus the aging population as well. So, you've got the 55 plus communities that are popping up that are still lumped into the senior, but they're basically a mix between, a more traditional multifamily with more amenities for people that want all the camaraderie of people being around, and also understanding the need that they are getting a little bit older, and they don't need to be maintaining and keeping care of, an acre property with a house and all the things that come along with it. So I'd say from that, we're still very motivated and very confident that the housing and the rental market is going to continue to boom, which also includes we're doing a lot of build to rent as well, which is single family product, but it is all built under a developer. Imagine a big apartment complex blown up and scattered on the site. It's just all standalone facilities, but you have your own little backyard. You've got some amenities that you would have in a single family home, but it's still a rental product. The markets that I still see are um, uh, is a no-go is really the office market. I think that's no surprise to anyone. Back when in 2020 when we had COVID hit, that reshaped the way everybody looks at office space.
Yeah,
And
definitely than a lot of people would like.
absolutely. So, whether that be, I know as the years went on and we came out of COVID, it was like, oh, hybrid's here to work. It's here to stay. It's here to stay. Now and we fast forward to where we are now, it's a lot of like, no, we want people to be in. We want people to be back connected in those environments, but everybody has learned to do more with less. And so instead of maybe having some big office that you would traditionally have, now people are sitting and they're hoteling at desks. And so they may not sit at the same desk for every day of the week, and they just pop in and connect where they are and go. So you don't have where, I see all these people, there's still some jobs out there, but it's all downsizing. So where they maybe had 3 or 4 floors of a building, now they're only going to 1 floor because they can do with so much less. So, we haven't been putting too much into the office market, too much emphasis on that. And, the other market that we touch on some of the, smaller flex space, because there's still a big need in that market. I know that there's been some ebbs and flows with the large industrial market. I do think here in Indiana, we've seen some starts again on some projects, but for the last couple of years, there was a lot of products sitting there, and I think some of that's starting to get absorbed now. So, so that's good to see because we're pro development, pro construction on all fronts. So
So the housing market, you're talking about affordable housing being a big issue. Do you think if we continue to build these multifamily units that eventually apartment prices will go down, or do you think that their mindset is, well, people are already paying this much, why would we drop our prices?
So, that's a tough one because what's affordable to one may not be affordable to the other, right?
Well, I
And
understand a rental's more than my mortgage in
right,
a lot of places.
right, exactly. And so, there is that happy balance there, which I think people are still trying to figure out. And, is it a workforce product that's trying to go at cater to people that are maybe at 80% of the adjusted medium income, or is it a product that's a tax credit deal and we need to be at 60% of AMI? And or is it a market rate and you just want to be in Midtown Carmel in a class A multifamily and you're just going to pay, double what somebody's, mortgage is, right? So I really think that it's just a situation where, you know, even when I was, my dream was always like, oh, I want to be a homeowner, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to buy a house and then I'm going to, and all that. I feel that a lot of people that are coming out of college now don't have that same desire. And so while I think it might be crazy some of these prices that are being asked and paid for in the multifamily world, but they have 0 desire to ever own, or if they do, it'll be way later down the line because they just want the flexibility. They want that ability to know that, like, if I'm out of, I wanna be here for a year, I'm gonna bounce to the next one, and I'm gonna go to the next one, and there's just a lot of that flexibility in there.
Mm, gotcha.
So
I know that question wasn't necessarily in your line of
no,
expertise, but I was curious because you
yeah.
brought it up. Um, Looking at projects like Leo at Carmel, 837 Lofts, and Iron Trail, there's a clear pattern in the type of work you're taking on. So when you zoom out, what are those projects collectively teaching you about how people really want to live today, and how should architects be responding to that shift?
Yeah, I mean, those are great examples of some of the projects we're doing, and one of those, the Leo at Carmel, it's a build to rent product, so they're more of the single family home, townhome, duplex style, with the backyard, with the really nice amenity centers and the workout fitness facilities, a huge pool, all of that, all on site. Um, the 837, the Iron Trail Apartments, those are more of a, cottage style, multifamily, more focused on the affordable side and the, workforce housing side of things, and so those are fitting the need for your public servant positions, right? Of the teachers, the fire, the police, they're fitting that need where these people, individuals need homes to live in, and starting point in some of these communities that we're building in is just either there's no product available, or the product that is available is unattainable from what they're making in a salary. And so what it's teaching us is that, it's the age old thing of real estate is location, location, right? And it's just everybody wants to be in a particular spot, but how do you get them there if there is not these affordable homes to get in? Their entry point is to get into that community is through these multifamily uh, communities that we're building. And so, and I'd say that that outranks anything is the location. The second thing is there are a lot of options that they do have in that multifamily realm. Whether they want something that has heavy amenities in it, or do they want something that's a little bit more stripped down? Because if you get something more stripped down, then maybe it is a little bit more affordable to live there because the developer didn't have the costs going into it. But maybe they want all those on-site amenities. And so, it's really interesting too, because the other thing is just thinking about, we always think about people that are local already, but a lot of these communities get people that they're maybe just moving here for the first time. And there's some other opening jobs, whatever may be opening up, that they need to move to this community. And so, they have no knowledge of it, of where they necessarily want to live, but they know it, the vicinity to where they need to travel to work is close enough. And then once they get in, then they can kind of figure out the market a little better and all of that. So we see a lot of that happening as well in the products that we're building. So,
Gotcha. Everybody loves to talk about construction tech,
yeah.
but most of it ends up being expensive window dressing.
Yeah.
Just personal opinion.
Yeah.
Your team uses tools like Procore, which we talked about
Yes.
before we even started this, drone capture, 360 documentation. Which of these have actually made you faster, more profitable, or even less exposed to risk? And which ones sounded great in a demo but never delivered in the field?
Yeah, I'd say that the best one so far, so we've been using, Drone Deploy, Ground,
Mhm.
and, we have used a little bit of the actual Drone Deploy for drone mapping and that as well. But the Drone Deploy Ground has been great. We got on board with it when it was Struction Site before Drone Deploy bought them, and using the Insta360 camera. One thing that we've mitigated some risk is, we do these facilities and there's hundreds and hundreds of outlets, electrical outlets, and there's plumbing pipes, and there's in-wall blocking so that we can support something future that's going to be hanging on the wall. And you get to a certain phase, you cover it up with drywall. And so what we're doing with that is we're going in and we are doing the Drone Deploy Ground, doing a map of the interior, so that we have an active as built effectively before we cover it up.
Sure.
And we've got photos that are stagnant photos or I guess non-interactive photos. But the nothing can beat having that ability to pan around in 360 degrees and go, okay, we're missing an outlet here. Is it there or did it just completely get missed? And so instead of going and Swiss cheesing the walls, now we can go to that model real quick, look at a photo before drywall was hung and go, oh, it's there. So now we have an approximate location. We can go and locate it a different way or find that it's not there. And then now we know we don't need to go searching for it. We now need to do minimal invasion into that wall. And so that's been huge in itself because that's saved us on several things where somebody is saying, hey, it's there, it's there, it's there. And we pull up that model and it's not there. And so now we know exactly how to move forward. It's a much more efficient and speedy response to it. So that's one instance there. The other instance with like the drone deploy, using it for the aerial side of things is it's always traditionally been very hard. I mean, you hire experts on the dirt and utility side because that's, they've got the equipment, they have the know-how, they have all of that. When you have a 30-acre site and you go and map it to begin with, and then you go and strip all the topsoil and you strip all the, whatever, you start moving dirt around, digging ponds, doing all that, you're going, well, it's really hard to quantify, what we have done and what we haven't when you can take and layer those two models together and say, okay, here's what we started with, and here's where they are at the end of the month, we can tell how many cubic yards have been moved on this site.
Sure.
And there's a big stockpile of soil sitting at the corner of the job. How much is sitting there? How much needs to be trucked off? And so traditionally in the past, before these tools were available to us, we would have to call a surveying firm and get them out there and do, survey points all over that pile. And then they'd plug it into their software and they'd spit it back out. Now we can go fly a drone for 20 minutes and layer the model, and those models will spit out, well, you have 17,000 cubic yards sitting in this pile. And it's just incredible how that can speed things up.
For sure.
And it's the trust but verify, right? Because I think in the past, and this isn't throwing shade at earthwork dirt companies, but they can you pretty much have to take some of those things by what they say, right? Because how do I quantify soils of what you've moved on a 31-acre site? Well, now we've got the ability. So we've changed that in the last couple of years to where we do a base map of every job site, preferably depending on if there's trees, but so we take the trees down, um, post site clearing, but pre topsoil stripping. And that gives us a really good baseline to know, we're not ordering materials based on this, but it's at least letting us know, okay, well, we have to build this section of the site up 5 feet. We can quickly tell on a map because of the benchmark, well, we're 2.5 feet. We can report more accurately to an owner, to the investors, to the people involved in the project. So that's one, thing with drone deploy. Of course, we use Procore, which is probably the most widely used software in the industry. And it's extremely expensive software. And we've tried to put a lot of things that we do in that, from bid invites to project financials to all of our contracts to drawings, observations, all of those things. And it has changed the way we do things because it gives the owners the ability to also have visibility into their projects, so they can log in and see photos at any time, and they can see even a month, if they want to see it on a Tuesday, they can go in there and look at, okay, what's going on today, and versus waiting till the end of the week when we send a weekly update to them. They don't have to wait, they can see it in real time. um, we've tried numerous things that have kind of flopped from a technology standpoint, and some of that might be because it sounded better than it actually was a shiny object. Some of it is you get out of it what you put into it, right? And so if we didn't have people on our team really bought into that particular way of doing it, then it's going to fail
Sure.
because it's not just going to magically do it for you. And so Without even going specifically into it, we've had, countless programs that led up to us finally pulling the trigger on Procore. We tried 2 or 3 different softwares that just, failed miserably. They were just too clunky. It was too hard to get up and running. It was too much. We didn't have the time because our business is building buildings, not figuring out software. But then you don't have the budget to bring somebody in to specifically deal with that. So we tripped and spent some money we probably shouldn't have, and even more so now with all of the things that with AI getting implemented into things in everyday life, even things that have been working really well for us now, we're starting to see that like, oh, maybe that is a little clunky how we're doing it. It's very manual, even though we are like 100 times more efficient than what we used to be.
Yeah.
So
So that's how you evolve.
yeah,
You guys try
absolutely.
things and fail.
Yeah. And we learn the most out of failures, right?
Sure.
So we're like, okay, let's not do that again. That was a pretty expensive mistake.
Yeah.
So, but for the most part, the other piece of it is too, is I used to make decisions in a vacuum, right? It was like, I'm just used to, when we started the company, it was me, then we added more people and we added more people, added more people. And, I currently run with a team of, there's 5 of us on the leadership team, 35 total people in the company, and it kind of represent each facet. So the accounting, the pre-con, the business development, and those facets, and then obviously the operations. Sorry, I didn't need to skip over that, which is the bulk of what we do is operations. But we meet weekly, and we implemented EOS as a company.
EOS, I'm sorry.
It's Entrepreneur's Operating System.
Okay.
So if you've heard of the book like Traction and there's a whole bunch of books all done with that. But about 3 years ago, when we implemented EOS as a set of business principles and how we conduct our daily business and how we make decisions, and so what that did is got me off the, I don't know if completely, I still try to dabble on it, but the proverbial hamster wheel
Mhm.
for entrepreneurship. And you tell yourself that if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Well, that is true for a little while, because usually when you're in the startup phase, you are it. You are the sole owner, the sole employee, the sole janitor, the sole, whatever. You're cleaning up every mess. What EOS then was able to do was to start dividing and conquering. And it's you have to give someone the ability to go out, and you have to give them the ownership of that task, that that item. That doesn't mean other people aren't going to jump in and help on it, but ultimately you are responsible for the outcome. And so what that has done then is allowed me to be able to not be involved in every single thing in the company and trust that my people are doing that. Now there's other mechanisms to see that things are still moving and things are still getting done
Big picture.
on the big
Yeah.
picture, but it pulls me out of every single thing.
How hard was that transition?
Very difficult. As you have your own you get to a certain point in your head where you're like, man, I'm killing it. Everything's going well. And then you really step back and you're like, but it could be going better. We could be growing more. We could be doing this, X, Y, Z. And, and so it took like, I'm going to let go of this. And it was just like little bits, little bits. But then I had to get vulnerable and tell people like, listen, I know how I am. I'm a doer. I want to put this on my list and I'm going to do this. But I say that for 15 things and I just don't have time. Then I become the bottleneck. And then everybody's at my door going, hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, this isn't sustainable. And so, but that's also part of the, technology that we use of it's a software, it's a program that we use that is based on 90s principle, or I'm sorry, EOS's principles. It's called 90, and it's basically how we can assign to-dos internally. And I can give Matt a to-do that says, hey, I need this document, and it gives you 7 days to do it. And then you accept it and say, yeah, that's no problem. I'll have it to you by then. Or maybe like, hey, I've already got it done. Here it is. I'm going to click it. It's done. And so now I don't have to come to your door and knock on your door every day. Hey, how's that looking? Hey, how's that looking? Hey, how's that look? I can just open that up and say, oh, well, Matt left a note here. It says, I'm almost done. I'm waiting on one more thing and it's going to be finished up. And that's boiling it down very simply.
Sure.
But it's utilizing that so that we still have visibility, but then we can give people the autonomy to get their work done. And I don't have to micromanage them. So that's a little bit of how we use technology.
Cool. No, that's a great answer. Um, you've grown fast, and fast growth usually breaks things, especially
Yeah.
culture. You talk a lot about team cohesion and accountability. You've
Mhm.
talked a little bit about firing. You
Mhm.
know, what's been the hardest part of maintaining that as you scale, and how do you make sure new hires don't dilute what made the company work in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that I wish I had like the magic answer of, this is how you don't dilute company culture. I would say that, we've had to build upon our culture because what got us from 1 to 5 people, and then 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and then now up to 35, it changes, right?
Sure.
And so we evolve, we grow up. It's not so much the culture of, hey, we're, this startup on a shoestring budget, and we're all sitting in one room together and just like all there all night doing things. It's not that like Animal House kind of mentality of maybe what was there in the beginning, where it was just like getting real scrappy and all that stuff. And as we've continued to grow, unfortunately, you do have to put guardrails on things, right? And so how do we do that without micromanaging people, without people feeling that we're in every single decision of theirs? And so one thing we've done, which back to EOS, is that it gives you like your defined, the why behind what we're doing.
Mhm.
Why do we do this? I'm not asking Matt to do this because I just want Matt to be busy. I'm asking him to do this because it fits into this puzzle this way. And so we've found that if we tell people the why behind it, it resonates so much more with them. Or youthful people coming in that don't have a lot of construction experience yet, they come in and so instead of just being like, hey, this is how you do it, and I need you to pump this out, it's spend the extra 5 or 10 minutes to explain the why behind it. Why do we do this process the way we do it? Why do we have to document this particular issue that we had on a job site? Why do we have to document it the way we do? Well, it's because number one, there's a contract. The contract usually defines that. And it's scary how many people don't follow the contract, don't even know what it says. And so we try to talk about the why behind that because it's a really hard lesson when you don't do it and then you find out the hard way later on of, oh, I didn't document something. I didn't dot my I's and cross my T's. And so with that comes a culture of accountability for the fact that we can run leaner as a company, still be very effective at what we're doing and produce what our clients are expecting.
Mhm.
But what do people want a lot more of? They're always trying to earn a little bit more money. They're always trying. So if we can be that much more efficient, understand the why behind what we're doing to protect the company first, then there will be more of that to go around. There will be more of us having more wins versus being on defense all the time. And let's be on offense. Like it's going to have to happen one way or another. So let's put the work in up front versus at the back end.
Sure.
And so, one of our core values is extreme accountability. And we don't want people to say, oh, well, I didn't do it because Matt didn't give me this. No, we want you to say, no, I screwed up and it's on me, and I'm not throwing Matt under the bus because it's on me and I didn't manage appropriately to get to that point. And so, not everybody has, there's been people that have come in and they've also left and they didn't fit that culture of wanting to take that extreme accountability. And it was everybody else's problem. And they never look to themselves and say, where did I mess up? As a leader of the team, I'm constantly looking at, ooh, I made some mistakes here. It's like I take full accountability in what I've done. It's not like, oh, well, my team, you screwed up. well, I didn't give you the proper tools, or we didn't go over the why enough. You didn't understand that. We haven't talked about it enough. So I think that really comes down to, the culture of it's work hard, play hard, but you got to be working hard before we play hard,
Sure.
and so if it starts to get out of control, you got to pull it back in line and say, hey, work is first. That's what we're all doing here, and that's what we need to. People don't like to go play games because they want to try to lose. They go so they can try to win. So winning feels good. Let's go win.
That extreme accountability, was that inspired by Jocko Willink's
It
extreme
it
ownership?
it it really wasn't, but it actually came out of, but I'm very familiar with that. We in our EOS sessions, when we would sit down, and our implementer, she was very good at drawing things out of us, and so we did these different exercises of things that culminated all to how we came up with our core values. And we really everybody, it was interesting to see the 5 of us sitting in that room of our answers all starting to overlap, and where we found overlaps is kinda how it was like, well, these are our core values that were already, like, important to us, and so it just kinda all culminated in that,
That's cool.
so yeah.
That's really cool. Um, a little bit of a throwback to earlier in the conversation.
Mhm,
If we're being honest, architects and contractors don't always play nice.
mhm,
Misalignment early can turn into conflict later.
mhm.
From your perspective, where do those relationships typically break down? And what would you want every architect listening to do differently on their next project to make your life easier?
Yeah, I'd say to answer the last question first, what would make our lives easier is to have the conversation early. Is to say, listen, like, we understand what set of rules you were given to play by. Here's the set of rules we were given to play by. Let's work together to figure out how to mesh those, because again, uh, like it or not, they're probably going to be slightly misaligned. Even though it's masked in this whole, like, okay, we're trying to get this building built. Um, but somebody's got, like I said earlier, somebody's got to make this building look pretty, and somebody's got to make this building actually be built. And the real dollars come into play. Yeah, there's architecture fees and all that stuff, but in comparison to the actual hard cost of construction, it's pennies compared to the actual placed work. So my single focus is to have that open communication and understand that it is not the construction team's uh, MO to come after the architect's design, because we're not architects, we're not engineers. All we are is people putting the bricks and sticks together, but we've seen a lot of it, and so our duty is to at least bring that up, to put that on the table as something. And we've had so many items that we've put in front of teams and then been told, oh, well, we can't do that because of this code, or we can't do that because of this X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And so then we also then remember that for future projects, but then at least it was brought up. We've tried to look at, leave no stone unturned of how can we get this to be the most value for the owner. And so I think that single thing right there would help a lot, just from the standpoint of when you enter into a project. It's not so much about, oh, well, this is this person's problem, it's this person's problem, it's this, whatever. Let's stop blaming. Let's just all own our stuff and say, hey, we have to work as a team, because if not, it's going to be miserable for the next 18, 24 months. And so, the reality is, with a lot of the projects we're doing, that is the timeline. So if you have a bad relationship that started right out of the gate because personalities got in the way, and somebody thought you were picking on their design, or we think the architect didn't put in the details they should have. Well, when you really step back, we all have the same goal.
Yeah.
It's just, why does it not get communicated well? So most problems in this industry are all because of lack of communication. And so that goes a long way to be able to do that, and even have those conversations in front of the owner, right? And say, hey, listen, we're not here to, the only way we're getting paid is to build a building. So that's our motivation, is to get this thing going. So
Gotcha. So I'm never personally involved in that
mhm.
stage of a project. I'm usually way before that.
Yeah.
How often is there no communication between the architect and the GC?
A lot.
Really?
Yes, in a traditional design bid build scenario,
Really? Okay.
they will typically be designing and they're having their design meetings with owners and they've got, they're meeting on a regular cadence and and then, they pop this out and then the owner's like, "Okay, I'm gonna have everybody bid my 90% permit set," and so it may be the first time we've ever seen the plans, which, we try to eliminate that by education of what we're doing and the clients we're going after. We're trying to they're like, "Yeah, we like what you guys are doing. How early is too early?" And we're like, "There isn't a too early." Like, we go and some of our clients, we're walking, a empty piece of ground with them, and we love being in on that phase because it gives us the ability to start helping them from the start. And so that's where I mentioned design assist, because there is no like contractual design build method there, but we are walking hand in hand with the designer and develop that relationship to where they're like, "Hey, we're thinking about putting X, Y, and Z on the plans, and this is how we want to design it. Are you guys thinking that that's good with you guys and how you're thinking about it?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're aligned on that." Then there's expectations that when those come out, it's already to what we know we're going to be building. It happens a lot. It's in the multifamily world a lot because everybody wants to try to put their own spin on it, but there's a reason that so many of them look very similar, and it's because you can only there's to achieve what you have to achieve from layouts and code requirements and circulation of the building and all of that. The owner can only afford so much because the market's telling them what they can afford on that
Mhm.
product to actually make a return on the building and all of that. So, um, instead of wasting the architect's time and letting them design something that we know will never get built, we can stop that at one of the phases during the design development. And so that's what we always try to do. Is it perfect every time? Probably not. But it does help. And most of the jobs we're involved in are that type of scenario.
Cool.
So,
Do the architects ever have a reason to in those cases,
Mhm.
the design bid build that you're talking about where traditionally there's not a lot of communication. Is there ever a reason for the architect to reach out to the GC, or is it something that you would do if you wanted that conversation to happen?
so we would probably do that in that scenario because in a design bid build situation, they're unless they get reach out to all the bidders, then they may be cautious of doing that because they're like, well, I'm not going to call them because they're not selected for the project yet. It all depends. It's the relationships go a long way too. So, if you're on a project and hey, we know we've come across this same architect, we've worked with them before, we're going to pick up the phone, we're going to call them. We're going to say, hey, this isn't looking like what we've normally seen. And this is something like extreme, but if somebody we get a set of plans from an architect for a multifamily building and all the windows on it are aluminum storefront, then we're gonna go, "Hey, wait a minute. I think you got a mistake here. Like this is not, these need to be a vinyl or a fiberglass, modular window that we're putting
Sure.
in. We're not gonna put storefront there that nobody would ever even be able to afford that." So, we have that type of stuff, but it's an awkward situation when you're in that design bid build because like how much do you want to go in and start picking it apart? And also then, why we avoid those type of situations is we don't want to be the one that goes to just bid it to get it and leave out all the stuff we know we need to put in there. And so, because that just becomes a rat race of who's protecting themselves the most to try to get that, and then everybody's left with a sour taste. The owner's not happy with either the architect or the general contractor, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
Oh, that makes sense. You've publicly shared that your team has had over 1,000 multifamily units under construction across Indiana at one point.
Yeah.
That's not a small operation anymore. So, what changed for you personally when you realized you weren't running a scrappy company anymore, but a machine that affects hundreds of residents and millions in capital?
Yeah, it's kind of a surreal moment really because you don't sit there and we didn't set out to say, "Hey, we're gonna be, I want to hit this 1,000 mark. It just like
Sure.
one thing led to another, and activity breeds activity. And so we had some really good fortune with some clients and people we knew, and started building that up. And I think what it did was people saw us building some projects and they were like, "Oh, we didn't realize you guys had made that jump to much larger work." So it's an interesting conundrum to be in because you're either too small or too big all the time. There's never like, "Oh, you guys are just right." It's always your balance sheet's not big enough, or you guys are you're way now you're doing jobs that are 70 million. Do you want to come look at our $1 million job? And we're like, guys, why preclude us? Come talk to us about that. Like, we've heard that now several times, and it's like, no, we still have plenty of jobs that are a couple $100,000 job, and it's like those are good. They have a purpose. Some of those earn trust of that client to use us on a smaller job, to understand that they like working with us, to then bounce that into a much larger opportunity. And so, that using the over 1,000 units was something that it was like already under contract, and we were there, and I'm like, I'm gonna just put all this together. Like, how many units do we have going? And I'm like, wow,
Wow.
we were actually, it was like 1,260 units, and we just turned over one. It's like 200 some units. So we're right at like actively 1,000. And I think in our pipeline right now, we have about 1,800 units in pre-construction in some form to start between now and the beginning of 27 as well. And so, if very rarely do I ever get to step back because I'm always 18 to 24 months in the future, trying to keep making sure we've got more jobs and we've got the clients that we're working with and all that. It's hard to step back and smell the roses, because um, you know, I never started this to be like, once I get to this, I feel like I'm to the top of the mountain, because I think every day you're always trying to do better. You're always trying to get somewhere more. And so you're constantly like, okay, that's great, but act like we've been here before, and now we need to go up and level up again,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's what keeps us hungry, is that if you start getting comfortable, if you start feeling like, oh, we've made it, then that's when things start to slide. That's
Yeah.
when you aren't going out and getting the clients. That's when a client's not happy because we didn't perform. And so, that is something that we use in showing people that, like, oh, wow, you guys are doing larger projects. You do get a lot of these. And we like to think that we're very honed in on the market on multifamily, and would go up against anybody in the market and feel like we would have a really good shot of being successful on it. So I think that is that moment. It's hard to celebrate that stuff because I'm always on to the next horizon, and that's just how my brain works. So
No, no, I totally get it. I'm the exact same way. It's one of those things. That's one of the sad realities of being a business owner is there's never, oh, I've made it, or
there's never a finish line.
I'm successful now,
Yeah,
because it's always, um like you said, moving on to the next target,
right.
moving on to the next goal. Um,
And that's great, if we do stay at 1,000 units, right? And we don't keep growing that number, but then now how do we take that 1,000 units that we're working on and become even better?
right.
How do we hone in and perfect even more what we're doing? Because every single job, I don't care if it is supposedly the same
Mhm.
design, every job has its own unique set of circumstances. So how can we take those, apply them to the next one, and learn from it so we don't make the same mistake?
Do you find yourself during that trying to do that while building the 1,000 units, or is that something that, is like a downtime activity?
No, it's constant. It's a living, breathing thing. Lessons learned on everything. We try to talk about that frequently, and what then happens is that we will take that and hone those into our SOPs, which I don't want to, our standard operating procedures. We don't have a 500-page manual. We've got framework to kind of get people from this is how we're starting up a job, this is how we're running it, this is how we're closing it out. But they're the high points. It's the big things that if you miss those, it's a big mess up. So we add those type things when we have a lesson learned. We add them into our SOP as a reminder for people to, hey, make sure we did this. Or if we get burned on one thing we deal with a lot is lead times on material. And hey, we got burned on this because lead times are going up. Let's make sure, go across all of our jobs, make sure this stuff is in and reviewed, approved, ready to go, and it's on its way. Because the last thing you want to do is realize you're getting countertops from overseas and it's a 17, 18-week lead time to get the containers on a ship overseas to get it to, dockside and then make it come ground to your job 18 weeks later. I mean, sometimes you don't even have that in left in the job. And so always honing in to make sure that we're perfecting our craft. And I don't know that we'll ever reach perfection, right? It's human error, but
Oh,
it's
that's
it's
fair,
a it's a good goal to try to
for sure.
achieve. Yeah. So
So you've already hit rapid growth, industry recognition, and a strong project pipeline. But
mhm.
growth alone is a terrible long-term goal. Speaking of goals, if it's not pointed somewhere,
Yeah.
when you look ahead to the next decade,
Mhm.
what do you actually want Inherent Commercial to be known for, and what are you willing to say no to in order to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, right now, as we sit, I'd say, the biggest thing that, I've never had an ego to feed to say we are X, Y, and Z, right? Because what success means to one person is not success to another person. And you can always look at it, somebody's always doing it bigger and somebody's doing it better. Oh, so it may look, right? And so you have to find your own happiness in what you're doing. And that's tough, right? Because what I started it out for was to prove to myself that I could start something up from scratch and get it to the point where we are doing, over 1,000 units. Um, what I am doing this is number one, what we're all doing, and I remind our team is that we all have lives to live, right? I mean, work is a huge component of that, but it's not everything. And so when you get lost in the work piece of it, you forget about all the relationships in your personal life and your families and your friends and all of those things. And so we want to facilitate somewhere that people can come, they can be a part of something fun and feel what it likes feel what it's like to win on things. And then when we do have things that we have mishaps, we have some losses on some things or whatever it might be, that we pick ourselves up and we keep going and show that like, hey, that doesn't define us just because we had a mistake on this or there was an error or we didn't do something to the best of its ability. So whatever we do, I mean, people always ask like, when is enough enough? And in this world of construction, we're ingrained to think like it's never enough because you just never know when the next big, recession or something happens in the economy or whatever. So you got to get it while the getting's good. But that in itself is how are we doing, every day, especially since we're in a lot of the living scenario, whether it be a senior living, a multifamily, we're in where people they're leaving their job to come there to relax, to kick their feet up, to be there with family, to do that. So understanding, we talk about, just like we do the processes internally, why are we doing this? Well, why are we building these? We're building these because these are future homes for people to live in. And so it's always eye-opening when some of the first residents, because a lot of these are phased turnovers, because they're so big. So you turn some buildings over and they start living in those while we're finishing up on the other side of the property. And it's really eye-opening when you're out there and you do see the family come in the minivan and park and their kids get out, and it's like, these kids are being brought up, they're growing up, and this is where they come home with their parents and they do their homework and they do their dinners and they, all these things. And so to have that why behind it, like, that is neat. We are building housing for people in these communities that otherwise didn't exist prior. And so there's that aspect. And then, how many people too can I give opportunity to? And so by me creating what is inherent, we, every time we're able to hire somebody, we're helping, and maybe, we hope we're bettering their position with where they're at in their work career, or, whatever, maybe they've changed careers. We've got people that transplanted careers and we brought them in under our wing and trained them up, and they've been some of the best employees we have. And so ultimately, that's the why behind it, and then it gives us the opportunity to then provide to others. We love for different charities and things that we're very focused on kids. Kids are really important to us, and so we a lot of our giving is related to some way, shape, or form children's needs. Whether it's children needing different housing, children needing their sick kids that are in Riley or some hospital system or Ronald McDonald House or anything like that. And so it's a mechanism for us to also then impact the community as well.
That's awesome. That's a good philosophy.
So yeah,
Cool. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit down and talk to me.
absolutely.
Great.
Thank you for having me.